Yo guys, Furiel here. Figured I'd make a quick video for you guys for patch 9.2 showing you everything that's new and changed to Death Knights. I will cover class changes and PvP changes, more specifically those that relate to Frost and Unholy in PvP, but I will show you everything. So if you're interested in saving yourself a little bit of reading, a little bit of scrolling, I'll go ahead and I'll show you everything that's changed right now. Okay, for the class changes, I will go ahead and talk about Unholy last because there were numerous changes made to Unholy. However, for Blood and Frost, I'll just go ahead and mention them quickly first because for Blood and Frost, there was only really one change each, and it was really more of just a minor bug fix for each as opposed to any kind of real nerf or buff. So for Blood, fixed an issue that caused Dancing Rune Weapon's Heart Strike to deal less damage than intended. So if you are a Blood Death Knight, while your Dancing Rune Weapon's cooldown is up, you will notice a slight DPS increase. For Frost, fixed an issue with Killing Machine that caused it to trigger less often than intended while dual wielding. So if you are a dual wielding Frost DK, you will be getting more Killing Machine procs, so you will also be getting a slight DPS buff. Alright, moving on for Death Knight's Abomination Limb, the all too famous Necrolord Covenant ability, has had its damage buffed by 20%. So that's a nice buff for that big 2-minute cooldown if you happen to be a Necrolord Death Knight, like most Death Knights are. The next change is for Abomination's Frenzy, which is the Necrolord Legendary, now increases enemy damage taken from the Death Knight by 20%, was 10%, and enemies affected by Abomination's Frenzy now also take increased damage from your minions for the duration. So that looks like another buff for the Necrolord Legendary. Final Sentence, the Kyrian Legendary, now grants 4% damage per stack, was 3%, duration reduced to 15 seconds, was 18 seconds, and now grants the rune and damage buff on the initial cast of Shackle the Unworthy, and again each time it spreads. Honestly, not a lot of Kyrian Death Knights out there, so I don't think that this one's going to affect too many Death Knights. It had the damage slightly buffed, but the duration slightly nerfed, so I'm not really sure how that one's going to play out there for all you Kyrian Death Knights. And we have a buff to the Night Fae Legendary Rampant Transference. Strength per stack of Death's Due increased by 3%, was 2%, so slight little damage buff there. Again, though, not too many Night Fae Death Knights out there, so this one change right here shouldn't really affect too many players. And we have a buff to the Unholy Conduit. Convocation of the Dead now reduces the cooldown of Apocalypse by 1 second per Festering Wound burst at all ranks, and it now also increases Festering Wound damage by 15%. This one's really nice right here because that's actually a buff that is not really cooldown dependent. I think that actually might be the only one that's like that, so that's pretty great news there for Unholy DKs. Next we have another buff to an Unholy Conduit. Eternal Hunger increases minion damage by 6%, was 3%, so they actually doubled the extra damage there on that conduit, which is awesome. That's for your Dark Transformation, so once a minute, nice little damage buff there. Then we have another buff to the Unholy Conduit. Embrace Death causes sudden doom to increase death coil damage by 40%, was 35%, so slight little damage buff there. This one's also really good because it's not cooldown dependent, it's just based off of your sudden doom procs. And lastly, we have a final buff to a Conduit Brutal Grasp, which increases Abomination Limb damage by 30%, was 15%, so this one was also doubled, again for that Necrolord ability, Abomination Limb. It looks like it got some considerable buffs to the Conduit and to the move itself, so it looks like if you go all in with this Conduit here, both Unholy and Frost DKs in PvP are going to be pretty scary when Abomination Limb is up. And lastly, the only PvP change for Death Knights was a nerf to the Spell Warden PvP talent, it now applies Rune of Spell Warding with 50% increased effect. It used to be 100%. So even though Death Knights have not really been represented very highly or very well for the last few seasons, I think everyone who has played a Death Knight or against a Death Knight as a caster can agree that Death Knights have many abilities that make them very, very anti-caster. You have anti-magic shell, you have anti-magic zone, you have a ranged interrupt, and you have numerous other abilities that make life very difficult for a caster. So even though I wasn't really hoping that Death Knights would receive any kind of nerfs, this one specifically, I do feel was warranted. However, I really wouldn't worry about this too much because Blizzard as a whole did go around all the classes and covenants and kind of nerf a lot of the absorption effects that were out there. So this one I think was warranted, and it was joined by a lot of the other classes. Alright guys, that's going to do it. That's everything that's new and all the changes for Death Knights in patch 9.2. It's looking overall like a round of buffs, more specifically for Unholy, which is great. There was only one nerf to PvP for that one specific talent, which really was an absorb effect and was joined, like I said, by all the other classes in a kind of class-wide nerf to a lot of the absorption effects. So it's looking like Frost DKs are going to be pretty much in the same spot that they were in for the last few seasons. It's looking like Unholy DKs are going to be in a better spot. How much better has yet to be determined, so we will see. Hopefully it is much better. That is about it. I hope that you found this video helpful. Thank you very much for dropping by, and I'll see you next time.